Complex is the model of diversification. For those of you who, like me, needed some convincing that sneaker culture can be the center of a media empire, let's take a quick look at a sizzle reel from the company to get you a little bit up to speed of the range of product and tie-ins that this company is engaged in now.
Well, we constantly evolve.
We've evolved into people, I think, that are more voyeuristic. We want to see our celebrities or our idols or our actors do real stuff. We want to be closer to them.
What up, everybody? It's Joe from Complex.
I'm Sean Evans, and you're watching Hot Ones.
Full size run. Let's talk sneaker news for a moment.
Woo! It's 360 with Speedy Mormon.
For Complex News, I'm Natasha Martinez.
Hey, how you doing?
You're right.
What's up with it, bro?
God, I know who this is.
What's up with it?
It's on Complex.
Yo, now you on Complex.
What could be a curiosity that people haven't really discovered yet? What could be a crazy next thing?
Did you have fun?
No.
Cheers, Billy.
And let's just say she could very well be a superstar in the making.
For a lot of people, it's probably gonna be the first time they ever heard me really speak.
Look at past interviews, you guys said you wanted to be mainstream. Right now, you guys are the mainstream.
Look at us.
Hey.
What's the deal?
We're sneaker shopping now.
One's the game show.
Oh, I'm gonna buy some sneakers. I gotta come at the fitters.
But you're clean, man.
I threw on the Air Force Ones to be even more metaphoric, you know what I'm saying?
Everyone has a story. The goal is to get people to actually watch the art that we create.
You really can't teach style.
Some people are gonna be mad or whatever. This is a very fun collaboration.
I want to explore the local culture, and there's nothing better than street food.
I'm going to be taking on the Pocky One Chip Challenge.
What happened to the tunes, bro?
Hot Ones Reebok collab.
And it shows you can have these brand partnerships and still be able to have fun and be creative.
We want to work with Complex because this is a network that we've grown up with.
We truly believe that Complex Networks can take us to the next level.
It isn't static. It has always evolved and continues to evolve.
We're talking millions of people right now. Bro, I'm ready to leave it all on the table.
The Zeros are nothing but an urban legend.
Okay, that's what I thought too.
Vice President Kamala Harris.
Hey, Joe.
It's my job to always introduce something new to the world.
You can make a body of work that'll age bad, or you can make a body of work that you can listen to for years and years to come.
By the way, if you haven't seen the Hot Ones series, you really got to check it out. It's one of the more inspired inventions, I think, in digital media the last few years. Complex, because of a lot of this success, Complex is in the final stages of a merger with BuzzFeed, which is why its founder, Rich Antoniello, can't be with us live right now. But on Friday afternoon, our own editor-in-chief, Joe Mandese, dug deep with Rich about what media is doing right and doing wrong. So let's take a look.
Thank you. We have Rich Antoniello from Complex Networks kicking off the Publishing Insiders Summit this week. And I can't think of a better way to do it. Rich and his organization and his team have built one of the most fabulous vertically integrated companies in the business right now. Most importantly, they're making a lot of money with it. So I know you can't tell us any secret sauces per se, but you know, having gone through what you have, transitioning from the legacy print models into all of the vertical areas you're involved in, what are the main points you can give the attendees this week that will leave them hopefully a little richer if in knowledge, if not in the pocketbook?
Yeah, well, thank you so much. And I want everybody to understand one thing is I still believe that a great deal of the people that are in this audience are producing some of the best content that is out there. Just don't be deceived by the distribution platform as the definition. That I think is a big mistake that magazine publishers did and let go of a great deal of their the mindset and the headspace as the most premium platform and sector. They allowed themselves to be defined as a print medium versus the actual word and the audience, the level of affluence that is there, the amount of impact and influence they have with audiences is still there. The question is how do we, and how do they individually take advantage of that massive amount of impact, differentiated audience, and instead of being paralyzed by the fragmentation and segmentation of distribution and free platforms, look at that, embrace that, and look at that as a massive power play. And if you really think about, that's what we've done, like unequivocally for 20 years, by the way. It's our 20-year anniversary coming up. And if you think about Complex, we've never changed the topics we cover. They've always been hip hop music, hip hop culture, art, design, sneakers. And there's always that cartilage between all of that. All we've done is iterate format and distribution channels. And we've stayed ahead of the curve in that. And we've always defined ourselves by being best in class narrative creators and storytellers within each of those topics. And then we optimize to the formats and the distribution platforms that where the younger audience can consume our content ahead of others. It's not a complicated, pardon the pun there, it's not complex or complicated. It's just understanding the game you're playing is not yesterday's game.
So with all respect to McLuhan, the medium's not the message. It's really the culture, the content, knowing what your brand is, and then optimizing it across whatever best available medium channel you have.
Correct. And there's also one other delineation. And by the way, thank you for saying it much more eloquently than I did. There's one other point there is the future of content development and audience is also very different. Audience alone 10 years ago and the measurement of its scale and reach was more important. And people, I think, are still behind the curve who are even trying to measure engagement. I think if you can take with that content and your brand strength to be able to actually develop a community, and when I say a community, I don't just mean a membership model and someone who's willing to spend a lot of money, but I mean somebody who is going to, on an organic way, be a brand ambassador for your brand and its content. So a big, heavy user base. And to me, the definition of a real business in this day and age, especially from a publishing perspective, is somebody who starts with a really strong community and then is able to build a strong business and then can be diversified in platforms and diversified in revenue streams because of the depth and the influence and impact of those communities. The communities need to be portable. And if you have just an audience, like a flyby audience, trying to get them to be a fan on another platform or consume a different type of revenue and participate in that way, that's when people fall apart. So pounding away at developing a real massive, heavy user-oriented community and then diversifying revenue streams and thinking about that, that has to come first, not the tactic. You have to have the strategy and the actual ability to do that and then go into the tactics of diversifying.
So when you look at line extending into a newer emerging platform, which comes first? You clearly know your audience and your culture of your community, but is it the monetization strategy or is it the content play? How do you extend yourself?
Before, and I'm going to answer this question as frankly and honestly as I can. 10 years ago, it was definitely content first, conversation first, then back into or quickly bring along the revenue. You can't afford to do that any longer. You have to think about it. It's not just because of the pressure we're under from an ROI perspective. That actually is, that's just the reality we're all facing. But I think the real thing, if you have a connection with a community and you're I don't love the freemium model. I think that was a very 2010, 2011 model. I'm a bigger believer in being frank about the value exchange, right? I mean, if I'm going to bring real value to you, you should bring real value back to me. And that's a two-way street. And that two-way street is content going one way, and by the way, I mean that in the broadest sense of the word, and revenue coming back the other way in the broadest sense of the word as well. Whether that's commerce, licensing, syndication, events, membership, subscription. It could be a wide variety of those things. But to me, in this day and age, to make an effective business and also set the right precedent with the end consumer, those have to be at the same time. It has to be concurrent.
Yeah, freemium is kind of a mongrel model, but explain a little better or a little more deeply from your consumer's point of view. There are times where it is a premium model where they pay directly for it. There are times where it's a ad-supported model. There are times where it's a commerce model. And then I guess there are times where it's a data monetization model where you're leveraging their data in other ways, right?
We do less of the last. That's an hour-long conversation in and of itself, right? So let's put a pin in that side. But I think if you think about complex networks, the umbrella, and then all of the businesses we have in this, right? We have 4 mega brands. We have Complex, the brand, First We Feast, our food brand, Soul Collector, our sneaker brand, and Pigeons and Planes, our music brand. And the way we run and construct this as complex networks is everything is shared services outside of the content development and the brand conversation that everyone is having. That means sales, ad sales, marketing, licensing and syndication, events. Those are our shared services that are in the middle. And then what we do is even within from brand to brand, Complex is still about a 55% advertising driven model. And the other 45% are events, ComplexCon, which we have upcoming, licensing and syndication, and e-com merchandising, right? And everything is very premium there, like premium merch. We're not doing a lot of affiliate links and doing like Skims and Amazon lead gen. This is more of like, we're doing a collab with Takashi Murakami and selling $8 to $10 million of $200 hoodies. So it's a little bit of a different model than other people. But then you go to a First We Feast, which has Hot Ones, The Burger Show, a lot of longer form content. That's only about 7% advertising. The rest, the other 93 is licensing, syndication, merchandising. We have about a $32 million top line hot sauce business just associated with Hot Ones. And then we have the licensing and syndication part of that as well, because Hot Ones is distributed in a lot of places. So is the Burger Show and other things along those lines. But the reason I bring up those numbers in the strength of that is the fact that we are smart enough to understand that each one is a different community that has a different relationship with each one of those brands. And we're not rigid about a one size fits all model. And if you think about it, we have all of those services because we know those should be the options of monetization that are necessary, but we turn the volume up or down based on how the community liaisons with our brand. And that's the other thing, is you can't force those layers. Not every brand out here that we're talking to has the ability to participate in every one of those things. Some people have much more vertical expertise, and that vertical expertise might have a very concentrated, heavy user oriented audience. And by having that means they have to get paid probably 7 different ways from a smaller base. More horizontal brands that are lifestyle or entertainment focused, that are more dotted line, probably won't have more than 1 or 2, maybe 3 tops revenue lines, and have to be more scale oriented within each one of those versus more vertically focused.
So explain how you're organized and how your ops and your processes work in that regard. So a lot of your community may be relating to some vertical brands. They may not be super fans of complex networks per se, but you on the back end manage all of those different communities through these verticals.
Correct. And the way it's a very non-traditional setup. I don't think a lot of companies are set up the way we are, because they tend to be like, here's our model and let's run it. Rather than we look at like the narratives that we have and then go, how do we apply what we're good at? It's a little bit of a flip in that respect. The other thing that I think we do versus a lot of people, and this is not a shot at anybody, but if you think about the categories that we cover, we not only are we a first mover in a lot of those categories like sneakers and art and design on a large scale level, and even honestly food culture. Most of food as a category is very service oriented, recipe oriented. With Hot Ones and the Burger Show and everything else that we have going on, it's very culture first, which I think is actually driving food as a sector right now versus the other way around. So when I say all those things, we also take big risks. And I think it's one of the reasons why we've been able to develop communities is that we are actually defining what the narrative of each of those categories needs to be, rather than participating and following along of what somebody has already said. So we're precedent setters, kind of, in this day and age where people talk about influencers, I talk about originators. And to me, Complex and all of our brands within each of our silos are originators, not just amplifiers or curators of what is going on, but definers of what the narrative should be around each of those topics.
So how do you know what new area of culture to move into and which ones you should stay away from? I know you have news channels. Would you ever get into business and finance? Could you get into health, other categories?
First of all, I love that question. And one thing that we are doing, I don't think that we don't look at it and go, all right, here's those categories. Where are their dollars? How do we go after it? Let's reverse engineer what our voice should be. It's what is the natural extension? The business question is the best one because to me, this is the ultimate narrative. And I'm going to let you in on something we are developing, right? We are in the middle of it. We've trickled in some content, but we haven't organized it yet on a large scale basis. For the last couple of years, you realize the sectors that we've been covering for 20 years used to be subcultures. They are now at the epicenter of influence and impact to all youth culture. But we're also, by being 20 years in, those also have become industries. And a lot of the people who follow and are passionate about sneakers and music and hip hop and art and design don't just want to do that on the weekends. They want to make those their careers. To me, that's an organic way for Complex to enter into the business category, not to cover the market or other entrepreneurs or the Bezos and Cubans and Musks and like everybody else. That we would be playing out of position. But you know what? To bring how to be involved in these categories, how to make that a part of your overall aspect of your life, and how to make money doing it, and be a definer within those categories, whether it's on the reporting side of it or the business side of it. That to me is a great way for us to enter into that is unique, that is white space, right? Because very few people are doing that. And we have the heft, the credibility and the authenticity to be able to do that in a very meaningful way from access to people and companies, and tell that and the respect from the audience to be able to tell that narrative in a very organic, meaningful way.
So what's the new news you're breaking with us? What's the next one?
It's not news per se. It's more of a more organized and consistent effort for Complex, not to bring business news, but more like, how do you, our community, participate and get shown the light of how to make your passion points into a business? How do you become the next best t-shirt maker that is out there?
Well, what I love about your model is you start with the culture first and then you migrate into those areas. So right now, if you looked at Madison Avenue or the media world at large or the world at large, one of the hot buttons is this diversity, equity, and inclusion. You're that organically, but isn't there an opportunity for you to leverage that up in some way as well?
Yeah, I mean, look, the thing that I don't like about it is a superpower of ours. I don't look at it as how do we wring the towel out and get more out of it. We've been a diverse company for 20 years. We've always been, anybody who works for us in any capacity is usually a brand first hire. Hopefully that's bringing the skill set. We don't look at skill set first, brand second. We've always looked at brand first. So you have to understand our culture. You have to understand what we're working on. You have to care about it very deeply. We can train up the skills, and that's the way we've always looked at it, right? So I look at the organic diversity that we have, whether it's male, female, race, ethnicities, doesn't matter. That's been a superpower of ours. And I do think it will continue to be, and this is a very unfortunate thing, but I want to be very honest about this. I think a lot of people who are out there trying to address this, they go in with the best intent, but they're going to end up checking a box, and it's not going to be very organic, and it's not going to be very effective. We're not chasing a number and a percentage and this and that. What we're chasing is the ultimate in equity and equitable opportunities. And we've done it organically. It's part of our DNA. And what we're going to do is continue to leverage the most talented, passionate people about our verticals. And I just think there's a big gap between us and a lot of other people. And I don't see those people really addressing it very effectively, unfortunately.
Okay, well, you've recently announced a pretty big merger deal that will make you part of a bigger holding, publicly held company. How will that change your culture, and why is it good for your current brands, and what new brands might grow out of that?
I mean, look, I always look at things on a macro and a micro basis, right? Macro, there is no question that the pressure is, the trend is for consolidation. But what's the rationale behind that? The rationale behind that is leverage and capital, right? How do you do more, better, bigger, faster? And for us, look, we had a wonderful exit 5 years ago to a JV between Verizon and Hearst. They've been tremendous partners, but because it was a JV, we never integrated into either large scale company. We continued to operate as an independent, digital first brand and media company. The issue is in this day and age, we're going into gunfights with toothpicks as an independent. So for us, this was an opportunity to work with not only some of probably the most brilliant people out there. I mean, Jonah Peretti is, I don't know if you've had the chance to speak with him.
Of course.
Is a brilliant, not just media person, but is one of the more intelligent people you're ever going to talk to. So there's a shared vision there of where the future is. BuzzFeed, Tasty, and their brand and HuffPo and their brand portfolio is very audience based. We're very brand focused. They're very, even the way they come at each of their diverse revenue line items is very complementary to us. We're very premium in e-com. They're very affiliate oriented. So we looked at these two companies and said, wow, if we can take the best practices of all of that, and they also run on a fairly shared service model basis as well. So it's a very simple integration. And the big part is for us to be, as a combined entity, to be tremendously well capitalized, putting a lot of money on the balance sheet, which will enable us to be very strategic on a corp dev basis, as well as invest in brands that all have, none of the brands in the portfolio I just mentioned are even close to bumping their head up against the ceiling. So, that's our jobs, right? And to me, this was an unbelievable opportunity. The complementary nature, the capitalization, and the larger scale amount of leverage that is out there. And the capitalization, not just on a short-term basis, but once you're public, it opens up a whole array of vehicles and ability to raise capital to do very, very large things. So this is about as exciting as it gets.
So with that, and maybe as one final wrap-up question, we could talk about the next new things. So in your 80, 15, 5% model, what are you going to use some of that capital to create new things around? Like, you know, we hear a lot about NFTs these days, and, you know, there's always a next new platform. What's your vision on that?
Yeah, well, I'm gonna give you as much as I can because it's very nascent. And I do believe that the strategy that we're discussing is much more aggressive than most. So I can't give away the whole house, but I will tell you this. I think the NFT market is very exciting, but in order for that to mature, it needs to address the lack of transitory nature of the asset. It needs to actually not be exclusive about the ownership of the JPEG, but and the money to be made not just on the ownership of it and the sale of that asset, but more of looking at it as purchasing IP, and then how that IP can be make money on a usage basis versus just the sale of the asset. That way we would make the NFT market larger than an art market, right? But I think also there's something brewing that is even bigger and more exciting from my standpoint is DAOs. And I believe that, you know, this fractionalized, decentralized, democratized way of buying into IP and a lot of other uses, but disproportionately IP from an application within this sector. You know, everybody has talked about the creator class, and, you know, there's been small, you know, I don't want to call them unsuccessful, but they haven't been massively successful platforms to help the creator class. The opportunity that DAOs present of a way to organize ownership and fractionalize it on a shared basis and track it well as well has an opportunity for creators in general and publishers who have massive platforms and are very good with working with creators, developing content, distributing that content, to rethink business models that will be more inclusive, more fair, and could also, the speed at which you can develop content and new initiatives could be completely redone. And that's as far as I can go on that front.
Well, that's a very exciting end note. I hope you'll come back to our next summit and maybe elaborate a little further as you develop along those lines. I want to thank you. You gave us a lot to think about. Unfortunately, we have no time for audience questions, but I want to thank you for kicking things off, Rich. So good luck with
those. Thank you so much. And hopefully we can do it live next time.
Absolutely. Take care.